Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you how I made some needle felted slippers, and I hadn't seen any kind of tutorials about how to do this because everything was doing wet felting with the slippers, but I think that these will be fine. You just have to make sure that you needle felt them very thoroughly. And I obviously have a sole that I made by tracing my foot. I made the wool sole, and now I'm just putting a piece of paper over and tracing around my foot to get kind of the top shape, and then a little band at the bottom or around the back of my foot. And that's pretty much just a piece of paper folded. And you really should make this about 3 inches wide. This is a little bit narrow, so I made the final piece a little bit wide. And then of course a cat is always going to get in the shot. All right, so when you go to actually do the needle felting, I used about 4 or 5 layers of the wool roving, and I kind of like felted around the shape so that I can see the shape. Now this shape is going to be large. This is going to be big, but you can always make it, you can cut it later. But you want to make it on the larger side so that you don't have to add pieces to it later. And you can always, like I said, make it smaller, but you can make it larger, but it's a little bit harder. So mark around it where you can see that that's where the shape needs to be. It's around, that's the outline there. And then really felt this very well. Now I'm using a little felting needle that has 3 needles in it, so it goes a little bit faster than if you're just using a single needle, and I would recommend that you get one of those. Okay, this is the sole, and I'm going to start attaching. This is after I've finished the top. So I'm attaching it to the bottom of the slipper. Now I've cut the slipper so that it fit my foot, okay? And if you want to see the full blog article with the step-by-step instructions, I'll put the link in the description, but you want to trace around your foot and kind of cut so that the sole is pretty much the same size as your foot, because as you can see, I'm attaching this to the bottom, and having that kind of curl up around the sole is going to make it a little bit bigger. So if you make the sole too big, it's going to be too loose on your foot. But I've felted the top, and now I'm attaching it to the bottom, and you start on one side, and then you're just going to go around as you work, and you're going to make sure that it fits and the shape looks right. And definitely felt it from the inside and from the outside. But I figured out that if you felt if you attach the outside, like the upper part, to the bottom of the slipper, you're going to be sewing a leather sole or a rubber sole onto the bottom of that to give it a non-skid surface. And that's going to kind of seal that in, like the seam will be enclosed in that. You should try to do it from the inside and the outside as much as you can. So see right here, I'm doing it from the inside to get that toe attached as well as I can. It does get hard, once you do around it. Like once you have the toe on there and it's shaped like a slipper, it gets difficult to do it from the inside because you have to really reach in there. So at that point, you just do it from the outside. But as long as you can, do it from both directions so that you really secure it in place. And it just is going to help it be a little more secure later. Now here I've got the little foam. I'm going to put that on the inside. And I'm going to really start shaping the foot and making sure that it's kind of rounded as we go around that curve. And you can see the bottom, kind of like the bottom of the green part. And I did these in separate colors so that you could really see the difference. So that right side of the green part is going to be the toe. And as I'm curving it around, it's taking on that shape because you use the large paper pattern. And I guess I'm trying to get the shape right, and then I'm kind of getting it from the inside to attach it as best I can. And then I will go in and put the foam on the inside and needle felt it from the outside also. But while it's open like this and you don't have both sides attached, then you should try to get it from the inside. So now I've put my foot in it and I've kind of pinned the side on, and now you can see that it has the shape. And obviously it's not exactly the right shape because I haven't attached it, but you have it pinned once it gets to the point where you really have to curve it around there. And it should be the right shape of my foot. I'm going to take this little foam thing and stick it inside the slipper and work on it from the outside. Now, I always wondered, I couldn't find any instructions on making a needle felted slipper, so I don't know if people think it's not going to hold together or if it's just faster to do a large piece. And I'd prefer to do it this way. I like the needle felting as opposed to the wet felting just because I don't have to work with water, and I can do this while I'm sitting in front of the TV at night, or I think I was watching a movie while I was doing this. So it's something that I can do kind of to keep my hands busy while I'm watching TV in the evening. So there's really no reason that you can't do this. It just takes longer to do a larger piece of needle felted wool than, with needle felting than it would with the wet felting. But as long as you make sure that you're doing a secure job and you're really like making sure that that piece of fabric is thick and stiff, then it's fine to do this with needle felting. And right here, I'm just trimming off the extra so that I don't have to felt it all the way in. Now see on the side there, I wish my thumb was a little bit lower, but there is a piece that had started to pull away, and I just had to shape the slipper and kind of fix it. And I think that I did show it. I'm working on this now. Okay, and right here I'm kind of poking it into the side of the sole, and the sole was probably about a 1/4 inch thick when I was done felting it. So it does give you a little bit of maneuverability as far as like felting it into the sole of the slipper. It's not super thin, and you can definitely do it that way. And I think right here, the wool had started to pull away and was a little bit thinner. So I'm just adjusting it so that it's definitely going to be thick enough when I actually finish the toe of the slipper, and there's not going to be a hole. Now, if there are thin spots, which I did have a few spots that seemed a little thinner, I just took another piece of roving and felted it on top of the thin spot, and it worked just fine. But just make sure that you're pulling this down around the sole of the slipper and that you're attaching it pretty thoroughly and securely so that all of the layers of the roving that you've put on there are coming around and you're attaching it to the toe or to the sole of the slipper. So don't try not to get just 1 or 2 layers that you're attaching here. Make sure that you're pulling every single layer around and attaching them all together. And once it gets to this point and the whole thing is kind of attached, you can bring the padding on the inside and you can start shaping the toe. Now this is where I'm fixing that little edge on the side. This piece had kind of torn apart, and I guess I didn't felt it long enough. I was trying to make the video, so I probably didn't do it as thoroughly as I should have. But if that happens and you get a piece that tears, you can just kind of pull it together and attach it with the needle. Or you can put another piece of roving over the top so that you kind of create another entire layer and then attach it to the sole the same way. And that should, as long as you work the roving and you're really working the needle into the felt and you're taking the time that it takes, it's going to create a pretty strong piece of felt because this took me a few days in front of the TV in the evening to finish both slippers. And it's not a super fast process. So I guess if you wanted to do the wet felting, then that does go quicker. But like I said, this is something that you can do while you're just kind of sitting around. And I probably should not do that. Yeah, so definitely try to cut the edges if there's too much. Don't try to pull it because you don't know if you're going to pull that whole thing apart. I think I realized that. But see, I do have the little foam on the inside there. Okay, and here we go. So I'm putting that over the little tear part that was kind of torn, and I'm just going to mend it. You basically mend it. And the good thing about needle felted slippers is you can fix it. Just put a little more wool on there and needle felt it into place. And as long as you're, doing a thorough job, it's going to make a firm piece of fabric that's not going to tear. Now for the backs, I just took the strip and I wrapped it around, and then when I got to that part where it goes into the slipper, I actually cut a little slit and attached it on the inside and then this part on the outside. So right where I'm holding it there, where I'm needle felting it with my index finger, there's a cut there. So it's the one long strip, but part of it is on the inside of the slipper and part's on the outside. So the lighter green is on the top of the darker green where it meets on the side there. And you can see here that it's going into the slipper. So by doing it this way, you can attach the upper part to the piece that's for the back of the shoe. And it's a pretty firm bond. And, obviously put it in there, and you just really have to work this. That's the only thing. Just keep working it until it's really firmly attached. And I did end up washing these just a little bit to make them shrink a little bit because they were a little bit too big. But here's the final pair. And I think I washed them after this, and they shrunk just a little bit. You can just do it 10 minutes, and it's needle felted slippers. It's really not that hard. It just takes a little bit of time, and you have to make sure that you're actually working the felt pretty well.